In this video, I'm going to discuss the conclusion of your essay in a way that you have most likely never heard before. You need to watch this video to the very end, and in the process, follow my channel and comment on this video. I'm curious to get your thoughts on it. The final section of the essay is, naturally enough, called the conclusion. In my experience, the conclusion is written, appropriately enough, last. It's rare to complete the conclusion at any other point other than at the very end. Let's talk about the basic elements of an academic conclusion and ones that you often hear about. Then I'll discuss my personal approach to writing conclusions. First, conclusions should reaffirm and articulate your main idea, otherwise known as the thesis statement, which is found in the introduction. Second, it should briefly summarize the key arguments. Third, offer general conclusions if different from the thesis statement. Fourth, offer a reflection or reflective questions which can be interesting and cause the reader to ponder more about the subject. And five, a warning that you should not add new material to the conclusion. In other words, no more arguments for your main idea. The diagram here on my left is presented by the University of Newcastle and shows a typical design of the conclusion. In red, we have the restatement of the thesis. In green, there is a summary of the main points discussed in the body of the essay. And in blue are the final conclusions. This is a good model to follow. However, keep in mind that the order in which these are found in the conclusion may vary depending on the purpose of the essay and the information that's included in it. Now, I'm going to talk about how I personally create a conclusion so that you can understand the thinking process that goes into creating an interesting conclusion. Keep in mind, there is no one right way to do this, so long as you have the basic elements in your conclusion that I've listed or mentioned above. So first, I generally begin my conclusion by segueing or transitioning from the last point in the body of my essay to the big idea of the essay, which we often understand as the thesis statement. That's why all conclusions that I write are different, since the relationship between these two vary from essay to essay. Let's use an example that we have used in earlier video segments. Automobiles have done more to transform city life than any other form of transportation. It has influenced where people live, how far they are from work, and how much the city expands. There have also been negative effects of the increase of cars moving within the city center, increased air pollution and noise being foremost among them. Thus, this essay will argue that cars should be prohibited from the city center. But in order for me to begin my conclusion, I need to know how the last paragraph of the body finishes. So let's say, as an example, that we are discussing noise pollution. The final body paragraph might look like this. The noise which issues from cars in the city center also creates hearing problems for its residents. For example, those living in downtown Bangkok experienced greater hearing loss than the rest of the population of Thailand. Traffic noise was the main reason for this decline. So now that we understand what the end of the body looks like and what the introduction is, then we can begin to compare and ask ourselves, how can we make a transition to the conclusion? For me, I need to know these two essential pieces of information. Then I can ask some questions. For example, how can I transition to the main idea of prohibiting cars in the city center from the last paragraph, which is talking about hearing loss in Thailand? So if we assume for the moment that in another paragraph I discuss these same problems in Europe, then I could begin the conclusion with a geographical link. From east to west, Europe to Asia, and all points in between, societal problems accrue with traffic congestion in the city center of the world's largest metropolitan areas. Here, I use a geographical link to begin the conclusion and follow that with the general premise or idea of my essay. Next, I will restate directly my main points from the introduction. But notice how these are expressed differently than how I presented them in the introduction because of the context. Only by eliminating the presence of private automobiles within these areas will there be an improvement in the quality of the life of their residents. Now I will restate the supporting points discussed in the body. Noise and air pollution issuing from cars significantly impact the quality of life amongst residents. This can only be alleviated at the present time through a decrease in the number of cars. Now, to conclude, I consider the opening line of the essay and try to unify it with the last line of the essay. In this case, we opened our essay with this: automobiles have done more to transform city life than any other form of transportation. It has influenced where people live, how far they are from work, and how much this city expands. So here's how I can end the essay and at the same time refer to this opening line. Ironically, the greatest impact on society that the car can have today is through a smaller presence in certain areas, not a larger one. The last line unifies the essay with the opening and puts an interesting or ironic twist on the ending of the essay, suggesting that progress is only possible with fewer cars, not more of them. Each essay introduction and body have these same elements from which to create a captivating conclusion. Use this model that I've just presented to practice creating yours. It's only appropriate to end this video with an interesting conclusion, since this skill can be developed in speeches like this one, just as it can in writing. I began this video by suggesting that the last part of the essay to write is the conclusion. Interestingly, the conclusion offers the writer his final chance to make a lasting impression on the reader. And here I use wordplay between last and lasting impression, which is that feeling the reader leaves with after they finish the essay. My hope is that this video has also made a lasting impression on how you view conclusions, understanding that this section of the essay can be most valuable. Thanks for listening, and see you next Tuesday.